The chair recognizes the Honorable John Briceno, Prime Minister of The chair recognizes the Honorable John Briceno, Prime Minister of Belize.
His Excellency Joseph Biden, President of the United States of America, and Madam Vice President Harris, heads of state and government, distinguished representatives, ladies and gentlemen. We have gathered in the City of Angels, the American city that most reflects the best and worst of the Americas. A city that is home to millions of citizens from every country in the Western Hemisphere. A melting pot, a melange, un crisol de culturas, a city in which too many have too much and too many have too little. A mirror of the Americas in 2022. Los Angeles, a beautiful city endowed with abundant riches, where ambition coupled with hard work makes real the promise of the American dream, that a decent living is possible for the majority. My friends, we have come to this blessed place to refresh our collective will to do good and to once again recommit ourselves to building a socially just Americas. From Barrow, Alaska in the north to Tierra del Fuego in the south, the peoples of the Americas await the outcome of this 9th Summit of the Americas. Their needs are many, their hopes expectant. While our philosophies and approaches are divergent, our vision is the same: to build an Americas that works for all of us. But we are at a tipping point. The Americas and the world face existential threats. As leaders, we are called to make consequential choices which will irreversibly shape our collective futures. Excellencies, we will continue to postpone the urgent action needed to reduce emissions, finance adaptation and migration, and protect the most vulnerable countries and populations from the impact of climate change. We cannot. Will we implement practical and innovative measures to alleviate the crushing debt crisis? We must. Will we ensure that the socioeconomic devastation, including a sharp rise in poverty, hunger, and education loss caused by the pandemic, do not result in a lost decade for the Americas with more irregular migration and insecurity? We can. Will we allow ourselves to be divided by failed Cold War paradigms? Or will we meet the profound challenges united and with a common purpose? We will. These are the questions which underpin the theme of this 9th Summit of the Americas: building a sustainable, resilient, and equitable future. How we respond to these questions will design our destiny. As we seek solutions, we know that money is not the problem. For example, in less than 3 months, 2 countries in this hemisphere committed over $55 billion to Ukraine. The question is, how much will be pledged to finance the ambitious agendas we agree at this summit? The future of the Western Hemisphere is a responsibility for all the countries of this hemisphere. Irrespective of our size, or GDP, or our system of governance, we all have a shared interest in a sustainable, resilient, and equitable future. The power of the Summit of the Americas is the space it provides for all the countries of the Americas to dialogue and agree on joint actions. The summit belongs to all of the Americas. It is therefore inexcusable that all countries of the Americas are not here, and the power of the summit diminished by their absence. It is incomprehensible that we would isolate countries of the Americas which have provided strong leadership and contributed to the hemisphere on the critical issues of our times. Cuba has provided consistent, unmatched cooperation in health to almost 2/3 of the countries in this hemisphere, including Belize. The illegal blockade against Cuba is an affront to humanity. In fact, it is un-American. The time has come, Mr. President, to lift the blockade and to build bonds of friendship with the people of Cuba. Similarly, Venezuela has done so much towards energy security for the Caribbean region through its innovative financing programs. Venezuela's absence is unforgivable. Excellencies, at this most critical juncture, when the future of our hemisphere is at stake, we stand divided. And that is why the Summit of the Americas should have been inclusive. Geography, not politics, defines the Americas. The Belizean people, like people across Latin America and the Caribbean, are weathering successive and simultaneous crises. Caribbean economies are in a precarious place because of our inherent vulnerabilities to external shocks, including exposure to climate change and devastating storms. But the pandemic and now the effects because of the war in Ukraine have further battered our economies. Notwithstanding the 6% recovery in global growth in 2021, CARICOM member states, except for Guyana, recorded an average growth rate of 1%. A few member states experienced even further GDP losses ranging from -1% to -6.3%. Member states were expected to record a stronger growth performance in 2022, but the effects of the war, rising inflation, rising oil costs, and further supply chain disruptions have led the IMF to downgrade growth projections for the region. We cannot continue on this path. The recession was not of our making. We have come to Los Angeles to agree specific deliverables on climate change, debt relief, access to concessionary financing, energy, and food security. With firm commitments, we can move forward. Action must include equitable access to vaccines and treatment for COVID-19 to end the acute phase of the pandemic and a strengthened and sustainably financed global health architecture. Action must include the Paris 2030 delivery agenda. We demand firm plans from developed countries for emission reduction targets in line with the 1.5 degrees centigrade Paris temperature goal, a plan to scale up climate finance beyond the floor of the $100 billion annually through 2025, and doubling of adaptation finance. Action must include finalization and use of a multidimensional vulnerability index so that countries like ours can affordably finance our recovery and build resiliency. Action must include debt relief. Action must include a coordinated, multilateral response to the deepening food and energy crisis. Action must include finding peace in Ukraine. Today, Belize affirms the integral role of democratic governance. Let there be no doubt about our unshakable commitment thereto. The confluences of crises of our times requires all the countries of the hemisphere to work together in a spirit of solidarity and cooperation. As we work this 9th Summit of the Americas, let us call to mind the words of El Libertador Simón Bolívar. En la unidad de nuestras naciones descansa.
In the unity of our nations rests the glorious future of our peoples.
Nations rest the glorious future of our peoples. Thank you very much.